Welcome to the Inspired Podcast, Leading the Way in Education. I'm your host, Andrea De La Cerda, and each week I'm bringing you insightful discussions and news about changes in the landscape of education and entrepreneurship. As a 22-year entrepreneur, corporate executive, business coach, and leader, I mentor a community of change-making women to get out of their box and step into their true calling to make their biggest impact. I believe that increasing conflict in the world today is a sign of the need for systemic change and a call for authentic, feminine power and passion to help make that happen. In today's episode, we're breaking down gender bias and what's really happening when women are called aggressive or bossy. Sound familiar? Two labels that I'm quite familiar with at this point in my career, and I'm certainly not alone. According to a Twitter poll, over 85% of women in leadership positions have experienced this at some point in their careers. Let me start with a story that happened just this week. This week, I had an experience, again, when my gender took center stage in the workplace. I'm no longer surprised by these moments, by the way, but this time, I have to say, I was a bit surprised by my response. Just to give you some context, my husband and I are in business together. We work closely together on most projects, but technically I'm his boss. How does that work? You might be asking. Well, with a lot of communication and empathy, and it isn't always easy. When we introduce ourselves to a new business connections, the common assumption is that he hired me simply to give me a job, right? I mean, I'm a woman, probably down and out. I needed a leg up, some support. This is somewhat awkward. It can definitely lead to some awkward conversations when we try to imply that the other way around is actually more true. Inevitably, then I almost feel sorry for that person because, of course, they're a little bit embarrassed for how they came across to me. Imagine that. I feel bad for them. So anyway, the other day, I'm in a meeting with our team, debriefing a client meeting that took place the day before. We're discussing what went well, what we could improve on next time. And my husband in the meeting then called on a gentleman in our Zoom room just to ask for his perspective. He was a bit more new to the team, and I'm assuming that that's why he called on him. Let's just call him Ben. So he says, "So Ben, what was your perspective?" Ben begins his answer with, "Well, your wife..." Well, my husband immediately stops him before he can go any further. No, Ben, she's not my wife. I mean, she is, but not in here. Here, she's my boss. And then just to make sure that he knew that I was in this virtual Zoom room, he follows it with, she's here. She's here in the meeting. Can you see her? I just want to make sure you can see everybody that's in the room. So Ben says, yes, he can see me. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, awkward. Ben goes on to describe my demeanor in the room to have been aggressive. Quote, I watched the eyes of my female colleagues get huge. They could not believe the blatant gender bias in that comment, and it was at least obvious to us. That word again, quote, aggressive. It's certainly not the first time I've been given that label. And of course, my immediate reaction is to think, oh no, am I? I mean, I'm the leader of this team. I certainly wouldn't want my team to think I'm aggressive. But this time, unlike other times, just as quickly as I thought that, then I thought, oh wait, that's right. I'm leading this team with confidence, intelligence, and decisiveness. Would these qualities make a man aggressive or assertive and forthright? According to leanin.org's Women in the Workplace report with McKinsey and Company, women are more than twice as likely as men to be interrupted. They're also twice as likely to get comments on their emotional state and 1.5 times more likely to have a colleague take credit for their work, the new study found. And based on the statistics, if you're listening to this and you're a woman, there's an 82% chance that you know that this is true because you have a similar story. What's even more concerning is how adjectives like aggressive show up in performance reviews. An article in the Harvard Business Review looked at 200 performance reviews within one company and revealed bias in this type of feedback. The results tallied the number of references to being, quote, too aggressive in the reviews, and not surprisingly, 76% of the instances were attributed to women, while only 24% of men were identified as having such a communication style. Several studies indicate that women are far more likely to be judged on their performance in ways that don't specifically clarify the level of performance or include focused explanations of what can be improved. I can totally relate to this. And if you're listening to this, I'd love to hear from you because you may be able to relate too. Being told in a performance review that one is, quote, aggressive, and then being advised to be, quote, less aggressive is an example of how women's performance reviews can exhibit patterns of bias, really vague feedback, and frankly, non-actionable suggestions for improvement, not to mention the potential impact that this documentation might have on their future, of their careers and their workplace, and their opportunity to be promoted. We need to do better. It's interesting because I even confided in a close girlfriend about my experience this week. And her first reaction to me was, well, were you? And being aggressive, that is. What? Huh? I was caught off guard. I almost didn't even know what to say other than, come on, you know me. Am I an aggressive person? Of course not. Quickly, she snapped back into a place of being a supportive friend. But it highlighted for me that even women's first reaction sometimes might be to believe that it's true. So how do we find a balance between how others expect us to act and what strong leadership really looks like when the two sometimes don't match? And it's really time to be honest about this topic. Are so many women, 76% was the statistic I just mentioned, 76%, were they really confronting and attacking their colleagues on a regular basis? Or is it really more likely that they're simply effective leaders? And how is it possible to be a good leader without being assertive? Looking back on my career, I have no shortage of these stories, and I'm sure my listeners don't either. So what can we do about it? It isn't like we can change the way we're treated in some professional situations, but our power may be in how we respond. The younger version of me might have gotten defensive, maybe suddenly compelled to prove my value. Can you relate to that? But that isn't effective. We know that societal beliefs about women in the workplace are not always reflective of the true value that we bring, particularly in leadership roles in traditionally male-dominated industries. So microaggressions are really not about us. They're about what society teaches us. If you can respond without getting defensive and instead know that it isn't about you, but perhaps it's an opportunity to step into a leadership response with confidence, grace, and authority. After all, some of the supporters in the room just might be leaning in to see what you do and how you respond. That was exactly the experience that I had this week. When I was met with this response from an employee, I felt that all eyes were on me. And the question everyone had was, oh my gosh, what is she going to do next? So take the opportunity to shock the room by showing how moments like these give you an opportunity to gracefully lean into your leadership authority and reinforce why you're in the room in the first place. As we wrap up today's podcast, remember that responding with authority and grace is key to maintaining your self-respect and your professionalism. Acknowledge any of these comments calmly, address issues directly, and express your feelings assertively. Make sure to practice self-care and really, truly seek support when you need it. And that's all I have for you today. I hope you got something of value out of my experience from this week. By standing up with confidence and dignity, you not only empower yourself, but you also set a really powerful example for others. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's continue to create respectful and inclusive workplaces together. Please tune in next week for another new episode. Thank you so much.